In the example, I actually have two textures going on. I've got this crinkle paper in the background and something else up here. So I'm going to pop over to my browser where I have found a texture just the exact same way that I showed you the last time. So I'm going to right click and choose copy image and come back over to Photoshop. Now I do that by hitting Command Tab, which brings up these options on my Mac, which is kind of nifty. And I want to put this texture right above the layer that I want it to be on. So I want it to be on the me. I'm going to grab my move tool, hold down Command, and click on the word me. Looks like I had a group there. So there it is, there's me. And I'm going to paste using a shortcut, so Command V. And there's my texture. Now this texture is pretty big, but I don't think I'm going to worry about that. What I want to show you is how to clip a texture to a layer. And the easiest way to explain that is to show it. So what I'm going to do is hold down Option, hold down Alt if you're on a PC. And if you hover your mouse between the texture and the word layer that it is right above and click, it will get this little down arrow. So what that means is the only place you'll see this texture is everywhere that this layer has pixels. And you can still move each of these individually, but just what's shown is affected by the layer beneath it. Now, I don't like the way this looks, so I've grabbed my move tool and I'm going to move this around to where it's somewhere darker, because I know it had some darker blue areas in there. There we go. That's pretty good. That's how you can clip a layer. Now if you ever want to unclip a layer, you do the same thing, except it'll show a little line through it. So I'm holding Option and I'll click on that line and it will unclip that layer. The last thing I wanted to show you how to add some fun texture to a project is how to use the layer styles, doing stuff like drop shadows and embossing. We'll get further into how to use those, but might as well show you the basics right here at the beginning so you can have fun with them. I want to add a drop shadow to the me layer, so I've clicked on that in my layers panel. To pull up your layer styles, you can either go to the layer menu and choose layer style and just choose whichever one of these. It'll open all the same thing. But the way I would highly suggest getting used to opening them is just double clicking on the layer. Now just click somewhere that there's no words, double click, and this window will pop up, which is your main layer style window. This information right here controls the overall layer. So if we pull this down, it'll affect the opacity, it will do some other things, but we're going to ignore this for right now. What we want to do is use one of these options over here. Let's do the drop shadow. If you click on the little checker box, it will create a drop shadow. However, we want to affect exactly how that drop shadow will look. To get the controls for any one of these options, you actually need to click on the layer itself there, or the word itself. So drop shadow, we clicked on it, now it's blue. Think of these like tabs. You have to be on the tab to see what's in the folder. So here are all of our options, and once you kind of play around with these, you'll get an idea of what they are. So opacity is fairly obvious. How dark do you want your drop shadow to be? And remember, we're adjusting this so that it can be readable. The angle, this circle, is indicating light, so if I move it over here, you can see that the drop shadow moves like I'm moving a flashlight around. Distance, spread, all that fun stuff. So what I have usually found is that the automatic default setting for almost every single one of these options is really kind of nasty looking, and also it's highly recognizable as the default in Photoshop. So you're going to get a much better effect choosing to adjust whatever style that you add to it. So once you've added a style, you can click OK to come out of that window. Now to go back in, you can either double click on this, which is shown up just below our layer. These are the effects that are on it. You can double click here, which will go right to that option, or you could double click on the layer itself again, and you could continue to edit. You can also add more than one style over here. In fact, you could add a whole ton of them, but I think I'm going to add a stroke, which is outlining the text. And again, because I don't like the default, I'm going to change some of the settings on mine, including how wide it is. So I just want a really small stroke that's not really noticeable, but it'll help it be a bit more readable and stand out just a little bit more. So now I've adjusted it. I'm going to say OK. It's added that other stroke. Now you can hide the effects here by clicking on the little effects arrow. So it's almost like it's a folder that will open up and show you what the effects are. And that's how you can add some texture. Keep in mind as you're adding that it is important to be able to read the words that are on the image, because that's the whole point of doing this. And you can soften any of the effects like we did with the crinkle paper by lowering the transparency. And we will definitely get into way more things that we can do with cool textures at a later lesson.